A lot of people say they're burned out, but if we're being honest, most people don't actually know what burnout is. They just think burnout means, I'm tired. I've been doing a lot. I need a vacation. But burnout is deeper than that, because there's a difference between being busy and slowly losing your capacity to keep carrying your life in the same way. So in this video, I want to break down what burnout actually is, what it really feels like, and why so many people miss it. I'm Cyrus Ausar. I run a burnout recovery center, wrote Burned Out but Built for More, and have spent over 25 years leading community impact. The goal is to be better than we are yesterday and apply that every day. This is the first thing people need to understand. Burnout is not just being busy, having a hard work week, needing a nap, feeling stressed for a few days. That's not necessarily burnout. Burnout is what happens when pressure sits on you for so long that it starts changing how you think, how you feel, and how you function. That's when it becomes deeper. And that's why a lot of people miss it, because they keep calling it just stress, when in reality, their systems has been overloaded for a long time. And here's the simplest way I can put it. Burnout is not just about being tired. It's when your life starts taking more out of you than it's giving back. That's when something has shifted. Burnout usually shows up in these three major ways. And if you understand these three, you'll understand burnout a whole lot better. Number one, you feel emotionally exhausted. Not just sleepy, not just physically tired, emotionally exhausted. This is when you feel like, I do not have the capacity for one more thing, one more text, one more meeting, one more person needing something from you. Sometimes you still can keep functioning. You still show up. You still do what needs to be done. But internally, you feel like you're hanging by a thread. That is what burnout is. This is a huge sign people ignore. Burnout starts changing your relationship with people. You will become shorter with others, less patient, more cynical, more emotionally distant. And a lot of people feel guilty when this starts happening because they think, why am I so irritated lately? Why do I not have the same patience I used to? Why do I feel like I just want everybody to leave me alone? That's often not because you're becoming cold. It's because your emotional system is overloaded. This is the part that really messes with people, because now it's not just about being tired. It's that what you've been doing doesn't feel like it's landing anymore. You're still producing, you're still showing up, still doing the work, but internally it feels like, what's the point? That's one of the clearest signs of burnout, because burnout doesn't just drain your energy, it starts draining your meaning. And once meaning start disappearing, people begin feeling disconnected from themselves. Burnout doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like sitting in your car before going inside, feeling heavy every Sunday night, being mentally exhausted but unable to relax, doing your job but emotionally checking out, waking up tired even after sleeping, feeling like everything irritates you faster than it used to. That's what makes burnout just dangerous. It often looks normal on the outside, but internally, you know something is off. I remember talking to someone who told me they had sit in their car for 15 to 20 minutes before even going in the house. Not because they didn't love their family, not because they didn't want to be home, but because it was the only quiet moment they felt like they had all day. And that stuck with me, because that's what burnout can look like. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just quietly steals your capacity. And people around you may not even realize how close to empty you are. This is important. People don't usually burn out because they're weak. They burn out because they've been trying to function in a situation that no longer working for them. That could be too much workload, too little support, lack of appreciation, lack of control, values not matching what they're doing, feeling like they're carrying too much for way too long. And this is why I say burnout is just not often about working hard. Sometimes it's about working in a way that keeps draining you without enough return. And that is different. And sometimes the thing draining you isn't even the thing you think it is. A lot of people think they're burned out because of the work, when in reality, they're burned out because work is where all the unprocessed pressure finally shows up. That can be grief, people pleasing, unresolved frustration, emotional overload, constantly performing while quietly falling apart inside. That's a huge difference. Because if you only blame your job, you might miss the deeper leak that's draining you everywhere else. A lot of people think burnout means I need a vacation. And yes, rest matters, but burnout usually goes deeper than that. Because if the way you're living, working, thinking, and carrying responsibility stays the same, the burnout often comes right back. That's why people take time off, they feel better for a little bit, and then they just crash again. Because they got relief, but they didn't get repair. And those are not the same. That's why burnout recovery isn't just about stepping away. It's about changing what keeps draining you in the first place. One of the biggest patterns I see is this. People often think their burnout is coming from one thing when it's actually coming from something deeper. They'll say, it's just my job. It's just my schedule. It's just stress. But when we slow it down and really look at it, sometimes it's grief. Sometimes it's people pleasing. Sometimes it's unresolved pressure. Sometimes it's carrying everybody else while never checking in on yourself. That's why burnout recovery is not about doing less. It's about understanding what's actually draining you. That's where the real work starts. If you recognize yourself in this, the answer is not to shame yourself. The answer is to respond. And here's where I start. Step one, stop minimizing it. A lot of people know they're not okay, but they just keep brushing it off. They'll say, I'm fine. I just need to push through. It's not that serious. But if your energy, patience, clarity, and emotional capacity are changing, that deserves attention. Because burnout gets harder to fix the longer you ignore it. This is a huge difference. Not what's stressing me out, but what is actually draining me. Because stress and drain are not always the same thing. And the question changes everything. Sometimes what drains you is not the loudest thing in your life. It's just the thing you've been carrying the longest. Don't wait until you're falling apart to rest. That's too late. What you need is real quiet, emotional space, boundaries, movement, time where you're not consistently needed. That's not laziness. That's recovery. And recovery is not optional if you want your mind, body, and energy to keep functioning well. This is one of the most important parts. Burnout gets worse when your entire identity is built around what you produce. So ask yourself, who am I outside of what I do? What gives me peace outside of my responsibility? What part of me have I neglected because I've been surviving? That's not a small question. That's part of healing, because your life has become bigger than just the output in your life. If your burnout is starting to affect your relationships, your patience, your sleep, your sense of hope, your ability to feel joy, that's not the time to just tough it out. That's the time to talk to somebody, a coach, a therapist, a trusted professional, because the earlier you respond, the easier it is to rebuild. And there is strength in taking yourself seriously before your system forces you to. Here's what I really want to leave you with. Burnout can make you feel like you're disappearing, like the version of you that used to be more patient, more joyful, more clear is gone. But most of the time, that version of you is not gone. They're just buried under too much pressure, too much responsibility, and too little recovery. And once you start addressing that honestly, you can begin finding your way back. Burnout does not mean you're lazy. It does not mean you're weak. And it does not mean you're broken. It means you're more likely carrying too much for too long without emotional support, recovery, or clarity. And the good news is this. Once you understand burnout better, you can stop blaming yourself for it. And once you stop blaming yourself, you can finally start healing. And that's where everything begins. If this resonated with you, comment reset below and I'll send you the Burnout Check-In Workbook. It's a simple way to understand where your burnout is coming from and how to start rebuilding. And if you're new here, this channel is all about helping people who feel overwhelmed, overworked, or stuck find their way back to clarity and energy.